there's only 2 spots in the group stage up for grabs, and in our first series, G2 Esports and Infinity look to join EDG and Cloud9 as they get ready to step on stage in Seoul. We saw Perks leading the charge for G2, Infinity in the house as well some awesome cosplay. Misfortune is looking dope and is ready to give us some, well, gunshots it look like, and hope what shots are fired by the teams vying for that group spot. Only 2 up for grabs today, so it all comes down to this. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter here with Mark Zimmerman and Jake Spawn Tiberi. That cosplay looks awesome.
I like the Baker Pantheon one the most. I couldn't tell what it was at first. I was like, oh, it's the bread for the shield thing. It's awesome.
Yeah, in Lowell Park, everyone shows up completely decked out.
See it. I can see Zimmy in a Baker Pantheon cosplay. I think it'll look good.
I am somewhat skilled at cooking things. I can maybe become a baker.
But what about dressing up?
No.
Wait, you look great.
No, people have to do this for me. Someone have to make my whole costume and everything.
Okay, well, that's a conversation for another day. What we do want to talk about is about yesterday, because Cloud9 and EDG secured a spot at the group stage. Before the NALCS 3rd seed, it was a tougher fight than expected. We can see the battle scars there. 3-2, 5 games versus Gambit Esports, Mark. It was a rough one for C9.
Yeah, and the first couple games did make it feel like it was very C9 favored. Even though they lost game 2, it was a very strange draft, and it was still a very hard-fought victory for Gambit to pick up with triple Infernal Drake. So a lot of people thought this would still be a quick series, but as it went on longer and longer, Gambit kept ramping up.
Yeah, it certainly did, and I think it kicked off in the mid lane. Kira just seemed to be absorbing Jensen's power as this series progressed and was able to continue to build his play. Couple that with the fact that Diamond had a standout performance, a big return to form for the legendary jungle, meant that it did take a couple more games than potentially expected for Cloud9 to close this one out.
Yeah, and I do think Gambit deserves praise for that, but at the end of the day, Cloud9, with a combination of the rookies, the veterans, and the coaching staff, I really feel like it was a combined effort to get them through. And with the condensed schedule that Worlds is this year, they are going to have to take a hard look at these games because group stage is just in a few days.
Yeah, and potentially showed more than they would have liked to. The fact that they stuck with the veteran in Svenskeren, actually didn't replay Blabber after game number 2, to me was a surprise because this is a guy that they had continued through a lot of their regional run.
Yeah, we'll see how they appear in the group stage. What is certain, though, is that EDG will look to be dominating just as much maybe as they did yesterday. 3-0 over Detonation Focus Me, the end of the fairy tale for the LJL, and maybe the beginning of a deep Worlds run for EDG?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very abrupt end to that fairy tale. EDG smashed them in about an hour and a half total of game time. It was a shockingly fast victory.
Certainly wasn't. I mean, Scout throughout the entirety of this tournament so far has looked like he might be the MVP of the play-ins. He is such an impressive player, can generate his own lead. Once he has that lead, he's an absolute weapon all over Summoner's Rift. And, you know, couple that with his partner in crime in Mako, really was just able to dominate the Japanese lineup.
Yeah, it looks like it took a while for this EDG lineup to come online, but ever since the gauntlet, I feel like taking that step and in the group stage with that small hiccup, right now they look like a well-oiled machine, and I'll be looking forward to their opponents in group stage. And while everyone stepped up, but when groups is on the line, some players falter on the world stage or miss the big skill shots, and then there are the players who lock down the opponent time and time again just to say, I'm helping, brought to you by State Farm. And in a series versus Gambit, Cloud9 Zeyzal chained together hook after hook, making him an absolute menace.
Oh, they're TP. Wait, they're disconnected. They're disconnected.
Go on the TP. Oh, you're this guy. Recon.
Come set. Look Galio.
Look at Galio. I'm tanking.
I have Gragas, guys. We split him.
I'm hitting Galio.
Turret side.
I have Gragas. I'm dead here. You guys still win. Hit Galio. Flash. Killed it. Galio in the wall. Right here. Right. It's only those two. He should be dead. Nice job.
Well, in general, the fact that the rookies on C9 have had some of these game-changing moments, I'm also thinking about Licorice's flank versus Detonation Focus Me, are the things they can build on going into the group stage.
Still a little bit to clean up in terms of communication. Yeah. They're focusing one guy, he's hooking another. He's using it more for CC than setup. It was pretty funny to see, but that was one of the plays that started getting the game back because he did have some suspect Thresh performances in the play-in group stage portion, and it was good to see him step up and continue in the best of 5.
And that's the impressive thing, that this is a guy that isn't necessarily playing consistently high League of Legends, but the fact that he is able to get back there and he does continue communicating throughout the tense moments of the game. And he looked like he almost had Diamond on a rope there. He had to grab him like 3 times, but in the end was able to take him down.
Good stuff. We'll be looking for more good stuff and nice plays today, as it is time to find out our last teams for the World's group stage. We've got 2 more best-of-5 series coming up, G2 versus Infinity and GRX versus Supermassive. Yesterday we went all the way to 8 games, maybe a bit unexpected. What does my panel think of the game score today?
I thought it was going to be, a 3-1 and a 3-0, and that's kind of how it feels again for me today, even though we did get a full 5-game series. I think actually G2 will do the clean 3-0, and the 3-1 series will come from GRX versus Supermassive.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and after seeing G2's up and down performance throughout the group stage, I think that's a little bit suspect. I think that they do have a very good early game, but Infinity has shown they can fight fire with fire. I give them a game. On the flip side, even though I think Supermassive is the best Tier 2 team coming into this one, I think they're going up against a very dangerous opponent in GRX. I think GRX will close it out pretty
No risks taken in predictions by any of us. We think it's pretty clear-cut, but we saw yesterday that it can go the other way. So maybe let's preview that GRX versus Supermassive matchup. We'll see exactly what they decide to do. As you say, you would say that it would be more in the favor of, GRX from the bat of it, but who knows?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say, because when we talk about GRX and you say, like, who's their standout player, I also think about the flip side, like, who's their liability? And when you come to that question, I actually don't think I have an answer. No one in their group stage got tested by their opponents, and to me, it feels like GRX is clearly, mechanically, very strong.
Yeah, it certainly does look to be the case. In saying that, I still think there is a strong point on the map for Supermassive to play towards. That is going to be their bottom lane. Snowflower still having a terrific performance. I think Zeitnot is coming into his own as an AD carry as well. And you can play towards the deepness of GBM's champion pool. They kind of live or die by how well GBM is able to play in these series. But if they really start, hitting Candy, trying to take his champions away, I think that GBM does have some depth there.
Yeah, when we look at kind of stylistically, GRX in the group stage did look pretty unstoppable with their early game power versus a Supermassive that has a super strong bottom lane, but I'm not convinced that they can play to the early game as effectively and as consistently. So how much will this influence this matchup?
Yeah, and the most impressive victory that we'll hit on for Supermassive is the fact that they were able to take the game off G2. But G2's mid-game in that series just faltered completely. They put the brakes on it. They were going up against Azilium, which is very hard to play around if it gets to the latter stages of the game. So I think that some of that was Supermassive doing a great job and G2 just, not having an idea how to play the map. So I think that stylistically today, they're not going to get the same luxury. GRX isn't a team, once they're ahead, that does slow down.
Well, for both teams, it would be monumental if they advance on. It's kind of expected, actually, of the LMS, but the 3rd seed in GRX could really make a statement that the rest of the teams are to be held in a positive light coming from the LMS on the other side. TCL-wise, for Supermassive, it would be huge. However, there are some very strong players on both sides, and you mentioned already, Empty and Candy on GRX really can sway a matchup.
Yeah, and this is such a historic matchup, looking back at last year's Worlds, where it was the TCL and Turkish team knocking out the 3rd seed from the LMS and kind of taking their spot in the actual group stage, and that was such a huge story for 1907 Fenerbahce.
Yeah.
And, this time it's on GRX to make sure that doesn't happen again, and Empty and Candy have been their star players basically since their gauntlet run in their own regional scene. So they've continued that, and I hope that they have another good performance today.
And that's impressive because we've talked about it a lot, but Empty only played 5 games regionally in split number 2, then got tapped on the shoulder by Toys, was given the World's run. And since then, it doesn't even look like they need to make a change in that jungle position. And given the fact that Candy is able to isolate a lot of matchups, does really allow Empty a lot of freedom to play the map how he wants to.
Yeah, and Empty has been sort of a revelation, I would say, out of the playing stage. I think the eyes of the world are more on him, and of NA most notably, as he very clearly kind of sent this resume out to NA teams.
We're definitely enjoy importing players and seeing what they can do in our scene.
Yeah, we'll see. In any case, will be a tough matchup for Supermassive, and Ovally had a chance to talk to Supermassive Snowflower shortly after the knockout draw to gather his thoughts, rather. Let's take a look.
I'm here with Supermassive support Snowflower. We just finished the group draw show, and it was Toys and GRX that ended up pulling Supermassive from the pool. So what was your first reaction to that draw?
네, 지금 막 조추첨에서 GRX의 토이즈 선수가 슈퍼매시브를 뽑았습니다. 딱 결과를 보고 첫 인상이 어땠나요?
일단 GRX에는 저와 좀 개인적으로 친한 레이즈 선수와 스티치 선수가 있기 때문에 뭐 반갑지만 아쉽기도 했었고 뭐 그냥 나쁘지 않았습니다.
So, GRX, there used to be my friend, Raze, and also Stitch. So it was feeling good and bad at the same time.
Well, you're going to have to take those friends on. GRX is a team that went 4-0 in their group. So how do you think that you guys match up to them as of right now?
사실 GRX가 지금 4대0 스코어로 아주 좋은 행진을 가고 있는데 그럼 상대 전적이나 어떤 결과가 나올 것 같은가요?
확실하게는 저도 잘 모르겠고 아마도 첫 경기를 딱 붙어보고 나서 예측할 수 있을 것 같습니다.
Well, I'm not sure yet, but I'm gonna find out after the first set.
And is there anything that you'd like to say to your friends, but now opponents, going into that game?
이제 친구였지만 적으로 만나게 될 상대에게 하고 싶은 말이 있을까요?
일단 월드에는 오지 못한 레이즈에게 너무 아쉽다고 전해주고 싶고 스티치 선수에게는 이겨주겠다라는 말을 전해주고 싶습니다.
So first for Raze, I'm really sad that you didn't make it to the world's roster, but to Stitch, I'm gonna take you down.
Well, Stitch, he's coming for you. Snowflower, thank you very much. That's it for us here.
Awesome. There, Snowflower, he says, well, we're just going to take him down. It's as simple as that, and we'll have to see what composition they do it with. And that brings us to the meta discussion about these play-ins, because with only 1 day left, we did want to break down some of the world's meta so far and how it has evolved. Now, one thing that's been on everyone's mind is the top lane. A lot of Aatrox, a lot of Urgot versus the tanks that we're not necessarily seeing as much anymore.
Yeah, and it just seems that they do it better. I mean, these are guys that pump out so much damage in the team fights, but they are so disruptive when they do get into your backline. It's still hard to take down. Really no reason to pick up a tank at this stage of the game because of how much priority these are able to generate in lane and then how useful they are late game.
And the part that I'm still looking out for is what develops after you start banning these two, because we saw that a lot in the C9 Gambit series, and I expect to see some more of that today. Then Sion's left up as the premier tank. He often gets banned as well. And then after you break out of those top 3, it does feel like it's a lot more open, as you see, a lot of pick and ban rate for both those two fighter top laners.
Yeah, and notably today, with some strong top laners in the games, we'll see what ends up being picked up. I also want to put the attention on the bottom lane. We have Snowflower and Zaytnot coming out later today, but it has been interesting in the support role. We've seen, of course, a Gragas come out as the counter pick, counter the Alistar, but maybe more interestingly, Nautilus as a strong counter to Thresh.
And we thought we were going to see so much of the defensive supports. We thought it was going to be Tahm, Kench, Braum primarily picked up in the bottom lane, but that Nautilus pick, I was very suspect of. I've seen it played a little bit this year. It hasn't looked all that good, but without the ability to punish, maybe because of the short-range 80 carries, it is having a good time.
Yeah, and the fact that we saw it in both series means that it's more likely a developing meta pick than just like a one-off cheese change-up.
I agree. A great play yesterday from Maiko as well, but one champion that we've seen a lot throughout play-ins is Aatrox, and Mark has some tips on how you can master the Darkened Blade.
Yes, absolutely. And even though we're watching the best players in the world, that doesn't mean that there's some things that they could improve on, of course. And so over the course of the play-in stage, I've noticed a couple little things that they could be doing better here. So to kick things off, I want to take a look at 2 replays just to start. And so if we pull up the first one, I want the viewers at home to play along with me. You see a fight breaking out right around the mid lane. Fabulous starts coming in. Doesn't really ult right away. Shows up maybe a little late and starts ulting after you start dropping his damage. And as a result, the fight kind of goes more even than it looked like it probably should have given the start of this fight. As we go into another one, see if you can see any similarities between the differences. This time it's going to be Rocky for Ascension, and he's going to be getting into a fight near the Wolf Pit. There's clearly a fight breaking out. Ascension's collapsing all around. Rocky starts taking damage in melee range. Still no ultimate to come out. And it becomes pretty obvious after Wonder collapses and hits him with his Urgot ultimate that this might not have been played optimally. So what is it that they're doing? Well, the first thing to have to highlight is exactly what it is that Aatrox's ultimate does. So if you mouse over the tooltip here, you see for 12 seconds, you start building up your revive passive. That's what everyone thinks about the most. But there's also a damage amp and a move speed for 1 second that only stays on for longer if you're out of combat. So if you're struggling to keep up with everything that I just said, we ran the numbers and made a really great graphics from our Emmy award-winning graphics team to really, highlight exactly what it is that this does. It's, a very complicated thing to understand, so we made it really simple. There's more AD and move speed on the right when you're ulted. So you kind of want to ult early to get into the fights. And so I'm going to try and execute that now. I've seen Jat have a lot of fun with the BFTS, so I wanted to give this thing a try. And it's really complicated, intricate thing. As you're getting close to a fight, what you need to do is, see if I can get this. Yeah, you press R. That's all you really got to do. And then you can just run at the guy faster, and then your damage is higher, and you shouldn't really be doing that after you start hitting it or get to the fight late. So as I wait for this to time out, I'll see if I can get it again. And there's a lot of combos that kind of come after this. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to try and do the full combo. I'm going to press R and then drop all my damage on there. And it's really simple. So you kind of press R, and then from there, you kind of just mash your face on the keyboard. And you just kind of do that for a little bit. And there you go. That is how you play Aatrox in Pro Play.
Yeah, there we go then. Coming up next, we'll hear from Jankos as he and G2 get ready to face off against Infinity in our first series. And as we go, reminder that shortly after all of the groups have been drawn, Pick'ems will go live. Show off the quality of your crystal ball and your tea leaves, and you could earn yourself a host of in-game league content.
After day one, Infinity is 0-2. If you want to have a chance at moving on, you need to find wins here. It's time to turn it on. It's do or die. Step up or go home.
Boys out of the picture! This could be the team-winning fight! We'll see if they're able to find the damage over the rest. Banko's already going to be brought down Scout as well! Infinity Esports, you just did it!
0-2 start, 2-0 finish. Beautiful from Infinity.
The push onto the Nexus turret as number one's already gone. Stolmaze is going to be thrown into the grinder. Wonder makes sure they pick up that kill. With Sight not down, the game is done!
And G2 Esports will take first seed in their group.
If GRX do in fact win this game, they will be locked in as first seed.
Zoning him away, finds the knock-up on the T-Wolf. There's the Maokai ult to force him out. Plugo, one miracle Q, flashes in, doesn't grab it. And PK Koala still fighting. They get a kill on the bot side. The Rise that dived into the pit is dead. G-Rex continue their rampage through the group, and they'll finish atop it in style. Now Magos tries to get himself away, going to be interrupted by the Hextech ultimatum. Gallywalty coming in now as well. GBM's looking to find a massive torch. He's killing everybody. Ascension Esports is on the run as Supermassive find an absolutely phenomenal amount of CC.
Supermassive demonstrating that they still know how to team fight. Once you hit 20 minutes, this team looks unstoppable.
So many good plays. I hope we see more of those today. And with that, in Worlds Countdown, we are only about 9 minutes away from Game 1, G2 versus Infinity. But before we get there, throughout the week, we asked you guys to tweet at us how you were enjoying the start of Worlds, and you did not disappoint. So here are just a few fans watching around the globe. First up is mid laner 713, who was supporting from Prague as Gambit took the series versus Cloud9 to 5 games. Oh no, actually it's someone who was supporting Cloud9, Rob. Is that a body pillow? Does that qualify?
It's more of a face pillow. It's a little
You get to be able to like cuddle into it.
Yeah, I stand corrected. This is Starfy Warf, obviously, with his sneaky pillow.
Do you buy those or make those?
It seems like that one's made. I'm not sure.
Ooh.
Oh, and this is the person that was watching on the train, mid laner 713. Awesome.
I hope he's comfy. I was gonna say, I hope he has earbuds. There's people across from him with earbuds in, maybe trying to ignore the sound.
There we go. And then the last one, Adam P. Britt tweeted from the birth of his first child. What is Spawn? I know you're recently, well, how do you say that? Got a baby? Like,
yeah, got a baby. I think that's a technical term. You recently bought a baby? Got a baby?
You're a father, so would you be allowed to watch Worlds in the hospital?
Well, the thing is like, if Direwolves were gonna make it far, if Oast was finally gonna break it, that's nearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity at this stage. Whereas, you know, I plan to have multiple children, so maybe it's acceptable. Maybe.
Clip this and send it to Spawn's family in 20 years.
Yeah. So, like, this is why he wasn't there. No, awesome. Keep sending in how you're watching World. But for now, we're going to dive deeper into the matchup, which pits the representatives from the LLN versus EU's third seed. So let's start with G2. As said, a rebuilt team since 2018 with Perks as the focus, but having a bit of a new identity. Before, it was always G2, Sven and Mithy and whatnot. Now it's very much about the top side. And when they came into Plains, well, they had a wonky first day, let's be honest, but they managed to get it back.
Yeah, and the top side was really what stepped up on the second day. They had a lot more focus on tempo junglers. For Jankos, he was making a ton of plays. Wunder was not playing Sion, thank God. He was back onto his more fighter-oriented champions and was able to have a huge influence over those games, and that's really what allowed them to make that 3-0 day to grab the first seed back.
And I think it is fair to point out the fact that Kyanan and Wadid is playing against Zeit, not in Snowflower, a bottom lane that we have just praised a lot, and we're able to withstand that laning phase. through some utility AD carry picks, something that we haven't necessarily seen a lot of in the Jhin. So I do think this bottom lane does have tools to be impactful as the game progresses.
So you're saying the top side of the map could shine more in other games, that there wasn't as big of a deficit necessarily in the bottom lane.
Right, they're definitely the role players on the team, and it's fine if you're taking utility marksmen to set up for your carry topside map to be able to go in and actually snowball these games.
So they're up against Infinity today, and this is a new representative for LATAM North. Of course, we're always used to seeing Lion Gaming / Rainbow 7, and that's why it's so monumental that this new team, this new squad from the LLN, was able to get to the next round. 0-2 start, everyone counted them out, even the fans probably, but then, oh my gosh, on day 2, beating Direwolves and most notably beating EDG.
Yeah, and they did it through some fantastic team fighting and their young AD carry arriving into the Worlds play, and maybe a day late, but in big style as he picked up the first pentakill as well. I think this is a lineup that, does have some good experience, but also needed to be able to play their way into the tournament as the mid game were a little bit more even as they stopped getting smashed in that early game. They did look better.
And G2, they adapted a little bit in draft between day 1 and day 2, and that's where it felt like a lot of their improvements came from. Infinity just looked like two completely different teams, with Cotopaxi getting crushed in day 1 versus Scout, switching around to more assassins and actually playing super well, which is why it's so important about this mid lane matchup.
Yeah, I agree, because I think kind of the bad news for Infinity fans is that statistically they look a lot worse than G2, but I think on the positive is that they have players like Cotopaxi, like Solid Snake, like Renu, who can go absolutely off in the team fights.
And it looked like the switch just flipped at some point during this tournament. They got halfway through that game, they said, you know what, we're sick of losing, we're going to start looking for the big plays. And it was honestly on the back of Cotopaxi's Aurelia, something that is hard to play in the Galio matchup, that he was able to flip the switch as hard as he did was quite impressive.
Yeah, that raw mechanical skill might make things difficult for G2, but to get a word from the team itself, Avali took time with G2's jungler to gather his thoughts on his opponent today.
I'm here with G2's Jankos after the group draw. You guys ended up pulling up LLN's Infinity. They're also a team that just pulled off the upset win against EDG. So what's your first reaction to that draw?
I think maybe it's not the strongest opponent, because I think Supermassive was a little bit better and we had them in our group, but it's also not the weakest one. We did scrim against Infinity a lot, and I think we won every single one of the scrims, so I'm going with huge confidence into the matchup, but I hope we don't choke as we choke day 1.
Is there anything that you think the team needs to improve on before you face them?
I still think sometimes we run it down a lot, like we try to maybe make something happen when we don't need to, and that causes us to die. And also I was really greedy in the game against Ascension today, and I made Luca really behind because of it, because of me we gave up 2 kills. So I think as long as we are more aware and we still practice our macro, we will be fine.
And is there anything that you'd like to say to Infinity going into that match?
I just think that they should just relax and just kind of just play. I just want an even match, and I think they're a good team, so it's going to be interesting and fighting.
Well, play and have a good game, Jankos. Thank you, and wishing you best of luck. That's it for us here.
Thank you very much. Now, introspective from Jankos, but I think we have to be honest here. G2 is the favorite in this matchup. So let's take a look at the win conditions for the underdog Infinity Spawn. How do they take it?
Yeah, and this is a tough one because I agree they come in as heavy underdogs, but they need to force a tank versus tank matchup. In the top lane, Wonder is up 29 CS at 15 minutes. He's even had a game where he was up like 50 CS at 15 minutes. This guy's a monster. Get him on a tank, be able to neutralize that. Team fighting bottom lane, because I don't think Hyanin and Wadid are going to punish you if you take a Xayah Rakan. And then just throw caution to win. Fight often and as regularly as you possibly can throughout the mid game. Hopefully, they will make a mistake.
For me, I think you're right about the tanks in the top lane. So if the Aatrox and Urgot are banned out, please ban Sion by G2. He's basically the only tank I think that you have a really hard time playing other carries or fighters into. So if you ban out the Sion, you can give up the Ornn and then play something into it in laning phase and still kind of crush it. At the same time, please get a tempo jungler for Jankos. He looks so good when he's on the Olaf and the Talia and these kinds of things. That looks way better to me than the Camille or the fighter-oriented things, and allows for more control to avoid that aggressive early game.
Well, we'll see what happens. Of course, Infinity is used to playing from the underdog position they have now in the LLN, and when they had that comeback victory versus EDG, so we shouldn't count them out just yet. And a spot in the group stage is on the line as we head over to our casters for G2 versus Infinity.